Hey everyone, it's Kelly. I am back today with a new layout for the Shimmerz Paints Design Team. And before I jump into the process video, I do want to mention that if you mention my name, Kelly, at checkout, when you are checking out from the Shimmerz store, you will get a free surprise with your order. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that so I didn't forget as we get going with this process video. So I am going to be creating a Halloween layout today, and what I was just showing you on camera there, and it was hard to pick up, but this paper that I'm using for my background is a polka dot background, but the dots on the paper, they have a texture to them. So they're a little bit raised off the paper and they have a little bit of a shimmer to it. It was hard to pick up on camera, but it was just a really neat paper, and it was actually part of a paper pad, and it was from Pebbles. It was their Halloween collection last year, I believe. And the paper is pretty thin because it did come from a paper pad. So I did start out by adding just a layer of clear gesso to the background just to help prepare the paper for the liquid that I'm going to be adding in just a few moments. And because this is a Halloween themed layout, I did grab a 12 by 12 spider web stencil, and I'm actually using black gesso with the stencil versus modeling paste or acrylic paint. The gesso goes on very thin, similar to acrylic paint, but I just find that it spreads a little bit easier. I can use my palette knife, and I feel like I just have a little bit more control over the heavy gesso versus using acrylic paint. But you could really use any of those mediums and it would work well for this type of look. So I'm going to be using 4 photos on my layout today, and before I add any of the Shimmerz paints, I wanted to get an idea of how this layout was going to be put together. So I'm just grabbing some of the embellishments and getting an idea of the photo placement before I add those mists on there, because I like the mixed media to just kind of be peeking out around the edges of the embellishments in the photos. So having a good idea of where all those things are going to be positioned really helps. So Shimmerz is having a color challenge this month, and basically the color challenge is to just grab a color that you normally wouldn't gravitate towards and use that on a project. So the color that I chose this month is the Don't Citron Me Coloringz, and green just isn't a color that I go for. It's not something that I choose very often, so I thought it would be a great color for me to use for the color challenge. And it actually worked out really great since the color challenge is in October, because that Don't Citron Me color worked great with these Halloween embellishments that I'm going to be using. As I was going through my stash, I noticed that a lot of my Halloween themed products have that green color in them, and it just worked out perfectly with this layout that I'm creating today. Now I did grab a couple other colors to add onto the layout also. I just wanted to have a little bit of color variation on the background. So I grabbed Ruby Spritz and Little Yellow School Bus Coloringz, and I mixed those two colors together to create an orange. I actually don't have any orange shimmers in my stash, so that is something that I'm going to have to add to my wish list. But I really liked the color. It worked out great with the frame that I'm using there. I thought that it was a really good match mixing those two colors together. And you may have noticed when I was applying the color to the background that I did just spray the Don't Citron Me directly onto the background. So that green color I just sprayed directly on the background. But then I did use the packaging technique, and I like using multiple techniques when I use mixed media products. You really do get quite a variation when you mix up how you add them to your background, whether it's with the paintbrush, just spraying it directly on, using the packaging technique. There's just a lot of options, and it's just fun to play around with and see the different looks that you get when you use those different applications. So this is going to be the overall look for my layout. I have the embellishments pretty much where I'm going to keep them. I am going to add some of this green sparkly ribbon to this frame, and I'm using a hot glue gun to adhere down a lot of the products that I'm using. That frame is a chipboard frame, so it was pretty thick, and I wasn't sure if liquid adhesive would hold it, so I thought that the hot glue would work best. And I had originally thought that once I got this ribbon kind of ruffled and placed down that I would run my sewing machine through it, and my sewing machine did not like going through the chipboard and that ribbon, and I actually bent my needle and I think I would have to replace it. So I end up just leaving the ribbon without any stitching, and I like it. The green matches pretty closely to that Don't Citron Me color, so it actually blended and added a nice additional pop of color to the background. The products that I'm using for this layout, they come from a lot of different manufacturers. Halloween is by far my favorite holiday to scrapbook, so I tend to buy a lot of different products from a lot of different companies. And because Halloween colors are pretty universal, a lot of the collections blend together really well. So a majority of the die cuts are from that Pebbles collection that the background paper came from, and I believe it was called Spooky Boo. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the name of the collection. And I am also going to add some of these flowers, and those are from Michaels. I had purchased those years and years and years ago. They were on clearance, and I think I bought 4 or 5 packs of them, and I absolutely love them. If you look really close at them in the still shots at the end, you'll notice that the white flower has little spiders in it, and the black flower is actually a spider web. So they are Halloween themed products. And anytime I can add a floral to the layout, I'm going to. So I was really happy when I found those. And then that frame again is from Recollections, and I believe the ribbon is from Making Memories. It was another thing that I've had in my stash for quite some time, but I'm really happy with how this is coming together and how the products are blending together nicely. Now, I thought that my title was going to be Crypt Keeper because I believe that's what this costume is. This was the first year that my son wanted to dress up in a, I don't know if gory is really the right word, but it wasn't a cutesy costume. And I actually bought 2 costumes for him this year. I bought a Jack Skellington costume, and then he really wanted this one, and this is what he ended up choosing and ended up going with. He wore the Jack Skellington costume to school because this one was not appropriate for school. They didn't want anything scary that might scare some of the younger kids, so he did not wear this one to school. He did wear the cutesy costume to school. But the Crypt Keeper, I didn't really like the placement of it. I felt like the letters blended into the background a little bit too much. So I'm going to use that word crypt. It was actually from a sticker sheet, and I'm just going to place it over on the right side. And then I think the other word sticker that I added was costume. So I'm going to add a couple lines of journaling here, just talking about how this was the first time that Aiden wanted to dress in a scary costume versus a cutesy costume. And I used just a black journaling pen to add that onto the background. I tried to position the journaling in between the polka dot lines so that way my black pen wouldn't blend in with the black dots on the background. So I did add quite a few enamel dots. Enamel dots are one of my very favorite embellishments. And I added some orange, just circular enamel dots. And then I did also add some black star enamel dots as well, just for some additional pops of color and just to add a little bit more fun to the background. I did add some black splatters there. I just had some black acrylic paint on my desk, so I just watered it down and then used a paintbrush to splatter that. I added the date, and now I'm going to hold it a little bit closer to the camera so you can see it in a little bit more detail. And as I was looking at the layout when I was holding it closer to the camera, I realized that I covered up quite a bit of that Don't Citron Me green color underneath my photos when I added the photos to the layout. So in just a moment here, I am going to add a little bit more green underneath the photos. And I start out by just spritzing the green onto some packaging and then using a paintbrush to try to add it underneath there, but I wasn't quite getting the saturation I was looking for. So I just went ahead and lifted up my photo and took the spray bottle and just sprayed it directly on the layout. I was trying to be careful not to mist it onto my photo too much. And then I did add just a little bit more above the photos. But here you can see the still shots. I really like how this all came together. The colors are so much fun. I am so glad that I chose that Don't Citron Me color for my color for the color challenge this month. So I do encourage you to grab a color that you don't gravitate towards and just step outside the box and use it on a project. So I do want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with a new layout and process video.